On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise.
I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a garter fall from behind me.
I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question.
Yes! The young girl was astride the English woman, dragged her in hand as she stabbed wildly.
I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times. Indeed, it does appear that... I'm to the wrong judge. It does appear that the testimony that both witnesses here present saw it. The very moment of this heinous crime. What?
Now, if you will recall, I promise evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Yes, that was it. A damning evidence.
With what you have there, Counsel, a so-called fountain pen, is it? Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments, with her final ounce of strength, the victim clutched a piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer. What?
Your Excellency, if it would catch your eyes over the photographic print of the crime moment.
Goodness me. Yes, the victim is clearly grasping something quite deliberately there in her hand. Firmly.
Deliberately grasp it!
That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency. The owner's initials have been engraved into the ebonite barrel. R.M. Ray Mbami. Initials of the defendant.
Initials of the defendant.
No!
E.
This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as critical evidence.
So, have I omitted anything? Decisive testimony and damning evidence. There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel.
I don't understand. The prosecutor Ouchie of 9 months ago had none of this man's poise.
It's been zero poise.
Counsel for the defense, you may begin your cross-examination now. Naruhodo-san. Naruhodo. That means... Oh, yes, me. Is there another Naruhodo in my courtroom? Actually, there isn't even a single Naruhodo in your courtroom.
Cousin Ryutaro, pull yourself together, please.
Alright, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Find inconsistencies in the witnesses' testimonies to prove that they're lying somehow. That's all there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do. Okay.
Hold it!
That jaunty disguise. Oh, I said the wrong voice. Correct. Wait, no. I mean, it wasn't the first time I've worn this swimsuit for a dip in the ocean. It's tried and tested. Do what must be done to keep the Englishwoman under surveillance. Those were my orders that day. And this tried and tested outfit was the answer. Being able to blend flawlessly into a crowd is an important part of a detective's job. I submerged myself in the salty water, leaving only Mr. Turtle floating inconspicuously on the surface. Mr. Turtle loves the water. But there was no need for you to blend into the background of the assignment, really, was there?
If that made you late arriving on the scene, perhaps. I think perhaps you had your priorities wrong.
Perhaps I shouldn't pursue this line of questioning any further at the moment.
Catch the crab! Catch the crab!
Oh, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably, Suseki-san.
In more literary terms, you might say that it was a scream that could have pierced the heavens. Your scream shall be the scream that pierces the... Kia! Or the like. Of course, that's just a metaphor. We renowned authors want to describe things so.
I was hoping you'd do like Roy's scream and Smash when he's dying, when he's doing the Star KO.
I don't remember.
Look it up after stream. It's meme worthy because it's so blood curdling. Something kind of like that. I mean, it's nothing's as good as Pitts, but
Yeah.
I never learned how to read.
Is that what Pitts say? When
Yeah,
he
that's
dies?
Pitts when he gets Star KO'd.
Oh, Pitts.
Suseki-san wasn't at all like this in England.
Anyway, I spun around the noise, and the beach hut immediately fell under my gaze.
Yes, the beach hut. The area is popular with government ministers. Many have seaside retreats there for rest and recuperation. Locals are prohibited from entering the area, so it's always very quiet. The beach hut is a simple structure, erected as a place for people to change or take refuge from the sun.
That's disgusting.
What?
Locals are prohibited from going to the beach?
Yeah, because it's for government ministers only. It's a special, it's a special like government beach.
Nature's public. That's my stance. I'm not gonna get political, but that's my stance.
Well, it's Japan,
Oh, no.
so they don't have nature.
The English woman commandeered the hut for herself, which meant that I was forced to change into my swimwear on the sand.
I imagine that was rather embarrassing for you.
Well, anyway, I tossed the crab aside and headed for the beach hut at a run. Or, in more literary terms, I decrab and beetled off hutwise.
I ran into the beach hut at once. I found a pair in question. Wait, by pair, you don't mean to say, but how could that be? No, you misunderstand. Obviously, I mean the victim and the defendant, Rei Membami-san.
Excuse me.
Oh, it would have been helpful if you could have just said that from the outset. If you jump to conclusions, you have to expect to fall flat on your face sometimes.
Dear me! Pinning your hopes on such an outside chance? Foolish. Very foolish.
It really was an outside chance. I just wish I'd realized that before I said something silly.
So, Inspector, why don't you tell the court how exactly you found the aforementioned pair in the hut?
Well, it was a sorry sight, a real grisly scene. I parted the Norn curtain hanging in the doorway and stepped inside, only to see the defendant leaning menacingly over the lifeless body of the victim sprawled on the sand. He was leaning there, menacingly. She was off. My glasses were nearly cracked at the ominous sight that met my eyes.
How thoroughly appalling.
Ugh. He doesn't appear to be lying here. Well, Suzuki-san, can you confirm what Inspector Hosonaga is saying, I wonder?
You'd like a literary man's opinion.
Hold it!
Stabbed wildly. You actually saw her do it.
Oh, indeed. The terrible spectre, the terrapin inspector, the bloody torrent, the author's torment.
Eek! Eek!
Every sight, every sound is still carved in my melancholy memory. That was my impression, at least, as a future literary sensation.
Counsel, what on earth was that shrill, effeminate scream?
Oh, no. What are you insinuating? I'm as manly a Japanese man as you.
I wonder if I might interject here, Soseki-san. Something you said is troubling me. That was my impression were your words just now, I believe.
So do you mean to say you're not confident that you really did see what you've described?
No! Yes! I know what I saw! My ears didn't deceive me when I heard that scream. It's my eyes didn't deceive me either. I could describe everything I saw vividly. I could publish it all in tomorrow's newspaper serial.
It sounds as though the next installment of I Am a Cat might take a macabre turn.
I think we mentioned it, but I Am a Cat was his first big published work.
Yeah. Wagahai no Neku de Aru. I think it's the Japanese title for it.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
No, Wagahai is important because Wagahai is the cat's name.
And Domo is the weird creature's name. I don't know what he is.
I
A
think
bear?
I think he's like a croquet. I think this is a fool's errand. The more we press your author friend on what he saw, the trench he's going to become.
Oh dear, how awkward. The blood on the blade approved to me she had stabbed the victim multiple times. She was stabbed multiple times. How can you be sure of that? Very simply, from the blood on the blade. The blood? When I entered the hut, I saw the defendant holding the blade raised up in the air.
Yes, that's right. I saw it too.
Oh. And I noted there was blood on the blade already at that point. In other words, the victim had already been stabbed at least once by the time I arrived on the scene.
Yes, that's right. I saw it too.
And the victim was already holding the defendant's fountain pen in her hand too. All of which means I can be sure the victim did not die instantly.
Yes, right. I saw it too. Or just regular saw it too.
Maybe a year in London was too much for him. He sounds like he's forgotten how to speak Japanese.
The logic of your argument is sound at least.
Well, as I said, it is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly. Perhaps it should have been your guiding principle to protect the victim flawlessly. That's just my personal opinion, of course. Also, you will refrain from mocking the witness. Oh no, I have just so many thoughts swirling around in my head that I started to think of the guy now. It's all I can do to stand here, wide-eyed and mute. Father?
Goodness, my dear. You really must try to calm down.
But how am I supposed to find an inconsistency in what these two gentlemen are saying? It's hard, man.
It is hard.
I don't see why either of them would have to reason to lie.
What you must remember, I think, is that witnesses may inadvertently lie at times. For various reasons. A misunderstanding, a mistaken observation, a delusion, even.
Ah, a delusion.
What's important is that we determine the truth, and there's only one sure way to do that.
Yes, with evidence, of course.
Spoken like a true judicial assistant. During your witness's testimony, you can use the right bumper to pick a piece of evidence to present for consideration. So you need to listen carefully to what each statement and compare what's said to the details in the court. To find some conflicting information, that may be the inconsistency you're looking for.
Yes, it's all about inconsistencies.
Once you've identified a witness statement that appears to conflict with a piece of evidence, present the evidence to the witness with why. The way ahead will present itself to you, I'm sure.
Yes. Alright then. I'll consider the details of all the evidence in the court record against each statement to find inconsistency. I hope I'm up to the task.
Don't forget that you can have the witnesses repeat their statements as many times as you like. Everyone has to start at the beginning, remember? So those wide eyes are quite forgivable. And besides, there's no one else to defend the poor girl.
You're right. I need to listen to the testimony again from the start. Okay, do you know where to present?
Let me see. I know we're going to present the picture where I think Soseki mentions that she had it up. The pen. Because, like, the corpse still has the pen, so how the defendant have the pen, you know what I mean?
Okay, which statement?
Okay, next one. Next one. Next one. There.
That she had the dagger in hand?
Yeah. And then you're presenting the pen. Because it's a pen, right? I thought that was the...
No, the victim was holding the pen.
Oh, I thought the weapon was the pen as well.
No, the weapon's a knife? A dagger.
Oh, I
It
guess
says,
so.
it says in the postmortem it's for a knife.
Maybe the pen is a knife. I don't know. Okay, so next one? Okay, let me see the evidence then. Like, I literally thought the pen was a murder this entire time. Okay.
They never said that the pen was a
Okay,
murder
go
weapon.
back. Yeah, that one. Actually, just present that to that. Yeah, multiple times, and it's there. You go.
I don't know where you got the pen being the murder weapon.
I don't know. I really thought that the pen was a murder weapon.
With that accusatory cry that just welled up from deep inside me, I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Narahara-san have stood here at this bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed.
What are you gonna do that pose, counsel?
I'd like the witness to clarify something for me.
Who? What? Where? When? How?
Not to you, Saseki-san. The query is directed at Inspector Hosonaga. It's me. In your statement just now, you said the victim was stabbed multiple times. Yes, that's right. As I said, when I entered the hut, the defendant was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand, like a murderous demon. And yet, that cannot be. What?
Get to the point, please, Counsel.
In the post-mortem report, it clearly states that the victim was stabbed one time only.
Ah,
Ah!
In other words, Inspector Osanaga's testimony is clearly flawed.
Clearly.
Ugh! And Suzuki-san,
Me?
you claim to have seen Mambami-san in the throes of stabbing the victim.
Yes, I did. Wildly.
But both you and the inspector confirmed the same point, that there was already blood on the knife you saw the defendant holding. Yes, and? It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once, therefore, there is no way there could have been blood on the knife if that single stabbing hadn't already occurred.
True.
and what exactly is your contention, Counsel? Are you ever going to tell us?
Yes, Your Excellency, there's only one logical conclusion. What Saseki-san in fact saw was not the moment the defendant stabbed the victim at all, but the moment that the defendant, in fact, withdrew the blade from the victim's body.
That can't be. Excellent work, Susato. You exploded at them without objection and then proceeded to pull them apart systematically.
Well, this takes me back.
Hmm?
Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in that trial 9 months ago. A half-witted child with a half-baked opinion attempting to steal the show.
For the record, he did say objection, not opinion.
Oh, half-baked.
Objection!
You're right, there were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who was only half a head of hair. Has only half a head.
Slander! My head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this talk of stabbing and withdrawing and multiple wounds, it makes not a jot of difference.
What? Why not?
Engage your brain, young man. When the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was the fatal blow. And it was at that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade ready for her next strike, that the witness saw. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused had already stabbed the victim.
Ah,
I have successfully showed with your little display. It's that the mustache author is prone to moments of extravagance.
ah.
I got high.
I am in agreement with the prosecution. If the defendant was seen wielding the blade at all, that is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion.
But if she was withdrawing the blade,
Then we are back where we started.
sorry?
Consider this, young Yoko boy. If the student is innocent as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim? And with a demon's cold-blooded composure, too. The prosecution demand an explanation, and it better be good.
Oh,
Why
starting
did
to hurt.
Ray pull out the knife?
Ah, yes, going for the jugular.
What does Father mean by that? What does Father mean by that?
Let the court hear your answer then, counsel.
The truth is, I don't really know. But I have to come up with a plausible reason here. We don't have a case. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could save the game.
her. Save the game. But also save her life.
Let's not stab her again. She's not the killer. She's just trying to stab her again. According to the post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant. That's correct. It's thought she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury.
Indeed. Giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer.
The point is, being a medical research assistant, Mamami-san was compelled to act when faced with the wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life.
Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect from this young Yoko.
Indeed.
Is it just me, or does it suddenly feel much colder in here? Your Excellency, if I may.
Speak, witness.
I would like another opportunity to testify in respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the Yoko Defense Council, I mean. Slipshod?
An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young Yoko's hopeful has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense.
Very well, Inspector. I will permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the defense counsel's assertion.
Yes, sir. I will do so flawlessly. Forensic Medicine Primer. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical student, research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes, think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excess blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see.
Ha! This is why Yoko should stay on the farm.
Susato really didn't know that?
She should know that.
Like, you don't have to be a doctor to know that.
Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge.
Exactly. I agree with Ouchie here.
Anyone who has ever given someone a poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with Ouchie here.
Oh no.
Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so...
Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit.
Father, is it true what they're telling me?
That everybody stabs somebody about the time they're my age? Am I the weird one, Daddy? Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge from medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance to such fundamentals, fatal in many ways.
But then why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Brett?
I don't know.
Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. Seems almost impossible to believe, but... could my friend actually have...
Susato,
Yes.
pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here.
Ah,
Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination.
oh, yes, Your Excellency.
However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards.
I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard.
Pulling a blade for a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding.
You say doing it without thinking could be a problem.
Could be a problem. Does that mean that if you use due care and attention it would be alright?
I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out really, but... the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it.
Oh well, thank you for such a thorough explanation.
You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath.
Look. Back to the witness testimony, please.
It's basic knowledge that any medical research system with an answer should... I don't know.
In that case, there's an obvious explanation here.
Which is?
Clearly, the defendant Ray Membami-san does not possess an ounce of sense.
What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba?
I'm not sure you should be labeling your best friend as lacking common sense.
Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer.
I don't know. Young people today, if that's friendship, I don't understand it.
Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing.
He's got big hands. Jeez.
You know what they say about judges with big hands?
You need a
They
big
give-
gavel.
They give big verdicts.
Oh, that too.
Oh,
They do.
Oh dear, they recoiled on me rather badly.
That's life, I'm afraid. A lesson everybody.
Oh, I cut out the end. Oh well.
hopefully,
That's life.
what?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Hopefully,
gonna read it.
you can see now that this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Membami-san would certainly have been aware of it. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim.
But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently.
I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Oh, but rational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views.
Oof.
Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument. Susato here calling woman irrational. Whatever the motive, that it isn't in Membami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant.
And you, counsel, do not appear to know the law.
Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument, not feelings.
With this fledgling to defender, I would almost say I pity the accused.
So do I.
Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defense's motive, please.
Yes, Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Mamami-san. The man the victim murdered 10 months ago, Dr. Wilson, the defendant's highly respected mentor. Very well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Mamami-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant, despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual.
Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Membami-san's abilities.
Clearly, the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. Frey knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further. I just can't think of any other way to explain why she did it.
Susato, it's at times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals.
The fundamentals?
Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it?
Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already.
I think perhaps you're forgetting something. You needn't take evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail, too.
Ah,
I realize this is your first time playing the role of lawyer in the courtroom. So if you need reminding of rudiments, you need only ask. I'll do my very best to help.
examine the evidence in the court record. It's an idea, certainly. What should I do? We don't need a refresher, do we?
I know what to do.
Come to think of it, Kazuma-sama and Nohara-san were always turning evidence over and over in their hands. Yes, I need to examine things in greater detail with A.
By the look in your eyes, I see it's coming back to you. Go through the court records again and have a thorough look at everything. You may find.
Yes, I'll do it straight away.
Okay, what are we presenting where?
Are we looking through the evidence in more detail, or is that unnecessary?
If you don't know everything in the evidence. Oh, did we? I guess we didn't actually examine this. Let's start with...
If we take off the pen's lid,
Nothing. If you take off the pen's lid, it's a pen without a lid.
now let's unscrew the barrel, shall we? This must be the little reservoir that holds the ink.
Yes, you fill up a drying ink bottle up through the nib.
There's something wrong, Father. Father,
It's just that there doesn't actually appear to be any ink in there at all.
oh yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Well, it could be on the verge of running out, I suppose.
Bam, 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 bam.
And there's some sort of emblem here. Look, it looks like a hidden Mickey.
Oh
It's
no!
a lucky emblem. But it isn't a Yume University one.
It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind? But that would seem to imply that the pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray. Ba-bam, bam, bam.
Okay.
Okay, next. 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 Okay. Next. Oh, give me a second. Gross. This is not there's a cockroach on my wall.
That's not a good sign.
Oh no, it's not a cockroach, it was a beetle. False alarm.
Is a cockroach not a beetle?
I mean, it's not a traditional cockroach. I thought it was, but it's one of those. It's invasive.
Oh, is it one of those,
They're like black and red.
the ones like spotted? The,
Yeah.
crap, why'd I forget what they're called?
I don't know what they're called at all. I just know that they were.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Oh, gross.
Spotted lanternflies.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a spider lanternfly.
Yeah, they're very invasive and bad, and I actually haven't seen any yet. That's... What's it doing in the winter?
I don't know.
Okay,
Either
well,
way, I saw one and I thought it was a cockroach.
well,
Either
I
way.
just realized we can actually examine the paper now.
Oh, cool.
Raucous England returnees tell all. This is the interview with you and Soseki-san, is it, Father?
Bam, bam, bam.
Looks as though it's quite an exchange.
Yes, he became a little over animated. He was talking about Simon. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chop. Capture the moment his hand karate chopped me in the neck.
I do hope you aren't hurt.
That's so funny.
This is the newspaper from Soseki-san. Seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Exclusive, deadly poison stolen from Yumei Medical Research Laboratory. From Yumei's medical research? Father, isn't that your lab?
What the? Let me see that. The poison's been stolen?
It's this morning's paper that Soseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know?
As embarrassing as that is for the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard of such a thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned this information?
Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there?
It's highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I put Ray in charge of the project.
Ray, she was managing it?
If what's written here is true, that means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow.
I don't believe it.
We need to read this article very carefully. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, bam, bam. Bam, 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 bam.
Okay. Come on.
Following the lecture at Yuma University by Soseki Natsume on the August, to light a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensics was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound, poison-laced blade would prove fatal within minutes. Current methods cannot detect a newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of the symptom occurs in minutes, starting with the impaired breathing and ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. The symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It is apparently an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids and rumored to have been commissioned by the military.
Okay.
Okay, so that was all good information, just not relevant. What we were specifically looking for.
Is it not?
Well, what I was looking for. Because the way I play this game is I already think ahead of what I think, and then...
Oh, maybe that's not the best way.
It isn't, but that's the way that my head processes it. I have an idea, and then I look for evidence that supports it.
That's cherry picking.
How am I supposed to do it? Clearly, I'm playing the game wrong.
You're supposed to go in unbiased and try to piece together information to deduce it.
I guess so. So let's go back to the beginning then. I've been playing this series wrong since the beginning. Okay. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. So I think it's going to be the third one. There's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim.
Okay.
So now let's see what evidence supports that. I know that you don't like it when I think that way, but that's how I process it. I'm sorry. Okay, what's the next one?
Remember, you can look at some of these in detail.
Yeah. Let's look at that one in detail.
This?
Yeah.
Oh, look at all the zoomed in stuff.
I'm sure that's gonna be very useful. This. Okay. Cool. Oh no.
What do you wanna?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, see, I already put. The poison was leaked inside of the pen, and she got poisoned. See, that's my problem. Ugh, I'm playing this game wrong.
The
Man.
pen wasn't the murder weapon.
I know. Ugh. Give me a hint, because my head's already like 5D chess.
You have to use the details of two different pieces of evidence to put together. What's
Am I in the right statement?
about the pen? No.
Am I in the right? No, I'm saying, am I in the right statement to present?
Oh, yeah, it is the third statement.
Yeah, I was right. Okay, so. Okay. Only a single wound was identified. Okay, next.
Oh, I said the details, as in like examine.
Oh, I have to look at them. So, I mean, I guess let's look at the postmortem report. Uh-huh. Yeah, like that's important. The extreme meiosis, the pupil constriction, plus the poison is pupil constriction is one of the symptoms. So is either the postmortem report or the newspaper article? Can I present either of them?
I mean, perhaps you can do either of them. I believe I saved, so.
Do the report. The newspaper. The newspaper, sorry.
Poison article?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That means it is indeed could be either of them.
Oh, you did the report in yours?
No, I just was looking at something. Oh, no, actually, no, maybe it does have to be. Yeah, maybe it has to be this. No, there's only one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What?
Ha! The yokel's not only has a poor grasp of the law, but also is a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibly do you think you've identified? What possibility do you think you've identified?
It's here, in the newspaper article. An article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at the Imperial Human Unit.
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance to this case.
But... Prosecutor Ouchie, you will let the defense speak.
But a newspaper article, the court cannot rely on the kind of hearing those recent publications carry.
Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion.
Your Excellency!
Yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The real reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says,
Deadly in tiny quantities.
The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes. Are you suggesting if the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Mimami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible? Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What?
Bam, 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 bam.
This is complete and utter nonsense!
Not at all. The defendant withdrew the victim's blade from the victim's body. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility.
Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document.
Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Oh please, this is clearly desperation. The weasel's last breaking of wind.
That's a fart joke.
Poison has nothing whatsoever to do with this case, and I believe the defense is well aware.
It's a Japanese idiom. Maybe.
It's rough.
We have no proof of the information. The wretched newspaper article is at all reliable anyway.
In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense.
Exactly. Well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, Yoko?
Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds.
Coffee ground.
What?
You can't possibly.
From your expression, Counsel, it would appear these are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. This court demands evidence. Yes, Your Excellency. I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times. In my place at his side in the Old Bailey. In that case, Counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article?
The post-mortem report. Because her eyes are tiny.
That's not the button. That's the button. I would ask that the court refer to the notes section in the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim. Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death.
Well,
Under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes.
what are you doing, you yokel detective?
In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death.
What?
If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely,
Yes, as a medical research assistant, you would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt.
Ah!
You've never once voiced anybody in the Ouchie lineage. Why would you mistake that?
I'm getting very confused by Ryotaro here. Professor Ouchie. I think you'll agree this is very compelling evidence.
You, yoga student and yoga professor.
And at this point, I don't think he's using the word.
I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions.
No.
Eugen Mikotoba,
Yes, Your Excellency.
I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's agreement.
Argument.
Agreement. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please. Yeah, agreement.
Agreement. It pains me to have to admit it. But I'm afraid it's pronounced agreement. I'm afraid I don't know.
You don't know.
The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly. But I was unaware of any theft.
Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded?
No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say.
Ha! Listen to the bumbling academic.
He's supporting your argument, Ouchie.
Unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads it in the newspaper.
I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision.
Father,
A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students rather than allowing them off on killing sprees.
that's totally unfounded.
Oh, who's holding it?
Who's holding it?
Hold it! It's me, Elmo! Yeah,